Sony's Charlie's Angels hit theaters this weekend, and let's be fair for a second. This is a movie that nobody really wanted, and so when you have a movie that nobody's wanting and nobody's asking for, the likelihood of it succeeding is, not very good. And actually, as we've come to find out, that this $48 million budgeted action reboot of a franchise that died in 2003, nobody went to go see it. I mean, this is one of the worst bombs of the year. And that's kind of crazy when you look at, well, for one, the cinema score here is a B+, which isn't perfect, but it's not terrible at the same time. And even the Rotten Tomatoes score is a 60%, which is roughly considered fresh, and an audience score of 80%, even though only 619 verified people have actually reviewed it. So there isn't much there that can be argued against it in regards of it being crowd pleasing, at least for the crowds that showed up. And putting that against Charlie's Angels from 2000 with its 68% and 45% audience score, or Charlie's Angels Full Throttle with its 42% tomato meter and its audience score of only 40%, we can see that Charlie's Angels really isn't as bad as it could be. But that didn't help the domestic box office take home of just 8.6 million, with a worldwide take home of 27.9 million. Like I said, $40 million budget. This thing, it ain't doing very good. It ain't doing very good at all. And a lot of people out there are really trying to figure out why. It's a movie from a prominent director. Elizabeth Banks did quite well with Pitch Perfect, and she's worldwide and she's known and she's been around for a long time. And you figure people would have liked to have gone out and seen something that was female focused and female heavy, considering we hear a lot about the lack of diversity in today's movies. Well, Deadline here has the article. Deadline here has the breakdown, and we're going to go through why they say Charlie's Angels fell from grace at the box office with an $8 million plus opening. So now the Elizabeth Banks directed, written, and produced pick is also opening in 27 offshore markets, where one of them is China, where it also bombed with just a 7.8 million 3-day take home. Now this is going to prime and further spur a WTF reaction and anxiety among film development executives in town in regards to just what the hell works in this have and have not era of the theatrical marketplace. Many will make the hasty generalization that old, dusty IP doesn't work or is now deemed too risky when it's not a superhero project. However, movie making is an art, not a science, and annoying as it might sound, good movies float to the top, and this Charlie's Angels reboot didn't have the goods going back to the script. So they are going to be targeting Elizabeth Banks and her writing ability here, but if I do recall, they did try to reboot the show on ABC, and even that didn't go anywhere. People just aren't interested in a Charlie's Angels movie that I think probably isn't tied to the two that we had nearly 2 decades ago. So it goes on to say here, however, I heard that the script for Charlie's Angels didn't really attract top talent, i.e. Jennifer Lawrence, Emma Stone, and Margot Robbie, a trio that would have potentially jazzed up business. Yeah, if 3 of the top and highest grossing or highest paid actresses in Hollywood had signed on for this movie, you would have a much larger budget than 48 million and a much larger P&A budget. Anyway, hence why the production opted to go with a largely fresh-faced cast outside of Kristen Stewart. While we overwrite that stars mean nothing at the box office, they do sometimes when it comes to propping IP, and unfortunately and arguably no one in Middle America knows who British actress Ella Balinska is, and they've only just become acquainted with Naomi Scott from Aladdin and Power Rangers. Stewart, who is hysterical in the movie and even needed more funny bits, is in a different place in her career professionally, publicly, and privately. It's unfair to think that she could deliver her Twilight fans now. So they kind of put this on Kristen Stewart. They kind of attack Kristen Stewart for not being the box office draw. And look, yeah, they're right, to be fair. The last time we saw Kristen Stewart in anything like that was like this, that would have drawn then this kind of fan base, was when she played Bella in Breaking Dawn Part 2, which I think came out in 2012. I mean, since then, she's gone on to star in indie movies, which have done well, and both of her outings as hosts at SNL have actually been surprisingly decent. She has comedic chops that are apparently on full display in this movie, but still, no one is showing up to see it. Anyway, Goes on to say that Sony knew Charlie's Angel was a one-quadrant movie eyed at women 13 to 39, especially given its lack of action scenes, and wisely limited their exposure to what I hear is 50% with co-finance partners 2.0 Entertainment and Perfect World. Sony claims the budget is $48 million net, but we've heard that it's in the mid-50s. Tax incentives were taken in the Berlin and Hamburg shoots. Perhaps Sony could have spent more, but Charlie's Angel's biggest problem is that it has very low octane. We've seen it all before action scenes. Heck, there's more action in a 1980s Chuck Norris movie. After watching Charlie's Angels earlier this week, I put the two McG movies on Netflix, and it was like watching Star Wars in comparison to this reboot, with its sharp production design and camera movements. And say what you will about McG, he came from doing music videos. He knew how to have slick production design, camera movements, and it made it entertaining, even if the plot was out and out dumb. But if we're seeing all these action scenes before, like the one in the trailer where the woman shoots out of the car, right? We've seen that before in Mission Impossible. So it's not like it's new. It's not new. None of it's new. We've seen it all. And that's probably one of the reasons why people just didn't want to show up. It just looks familiar. Going on to say here, some will claim that Banks's vision was never intended to emulate the meat and potatoes version of the McG films, and that this version was expected to be more comedic and more feminist. Unfortunately, after McG set the table here with the franchise as an action film, you can't reverse it. You can only outdo him. And with a franchise movie like Charlie's Angels, you can't make it for a one-quadrant audience. And that is so unbelievably true. If you are just trying to reach one demographic and that demographic does not show up, you have failed in regards to making your movie. You have to appeal to everybody, and it's not that it's out of the realm of possibility. People went and saw the Charlie's Angels films from back in the day. They each made over $250 million. And the reason why this happened was because it was aimed at everyone. Yeah, you had comedy, you had action, you had weird creepy factor with Crispin Glover in the first movie, and you had sex appeal. Both Cameron Diaz and Lucy Liu were at the top of their game in 2000 and 2003. Drew Barrymore was on a revival with her career, and it just seemed to make a lot of sense. This has none of it. Going on to say here that the film arrived on tracking with a $12 million to $13 million start, but never really budged, but sank. That means that marketing didn't work. I heard that a $100 million global P&A was first planned, with the studio now reducing that overall cost greatly to around $50 million and pulling back on expensive ads. Another hurdle in activating the young girl demo is that much of the Pix cast isn't on social media. This is coming from Relish Mix, where they say that Banks is a social media star with over 6.6 million followers across Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, with Naomi Scott coming in about 3.4 million. As much as I don't want to think that this is a reason to really care, it is actually a reason to care. You have an audience. And if Elizabeth Banks is the one tweeting about it, and Naomi Scott's the one talking about it on Instagram, and not Kristen Stewart, and not the other actress who no one's ever heard of before, it's not going to really bring in a lot of people. But anyway, Sony kept pushing Charlie's Angels, which in hindsight means that there were more development issues. In May 2017, a release date was announced for June 7th, 2019, when the cast was locked down in July 2018. Charlie's got moved to September 27th, 2019. In October 2018, when Warner's pushed Wonder Woman 1984 from the first weekend of November to summer, Charlie's took over the autumn spot, which was the same place as the original 2000 opened. However, when Terminator Dark Fate opened on the same weekend, Charlie's relocated itself to this weekend as they vied for a China release, which they ultimately got. So it just kept shuffling around and people just forgot that it exists. You know, when they set a release date and they stick to that release date, people will remember because they keep having it hammered in their head over and over and over again. If you don't do that and you keep moving things around, people forget because they can only focus on 7 things at a time. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Charlie's Angels drew a 66% female crowd, which is to be expected, but it was split between 36% over 25 and 30% under 25. Both demos respectively graded it low at 68% and 79%, with men at 35% giving it a 68% grade on post-track. The diversity breakdown was 52% Caucasian, 21% Hispanic, 14% Asian or other, and 13% African American. Charlie's Angels' best markets were on the coasts and big cities, but then again, nothing to brag about in Friday's $3.2 million gross, which includes $900,000 from Thursday and Wednesday previews. So even early word of mouth on this thing was just not working. However, this is where we get into the whole woke category. Now, Relish Mix, which also foresaw this disaster approaching on social media chatter, Angels is the best example of a woke effort to reboot a franchise that many were not at all interested to start with. In fact, many references to the 2000 version get a call out as a reason this one doesn't seem to compare, whether it's the cast or the action teased from the film, and as observed by other recent films with some action adventure. Unfortunately, fans say they're steering clear of this one because of its girl power messaging. And trust me, they're not the only ones that are going to be backing up that as a point to beat their chest. What we've seen here with Elizabeth Banks, and I understand she wrote it, produced it, started it, directed it. This is her baby. She's not too happy with the turnout. In fact, she says here that you've got 37 Spider-Man movies, so like what the hell? She's not happy at all with the way it's turning out. But in a recent profile from WSJ Magazine, the Charlie's Angels writer-director star responded to criticism that she's been facing for rebooting the franchise with Kristen Stewart, Ella Balinska, and Naomi Scott, saying here, you've had 37 Spider-Man movies and you're not complaining. I think women are allowed to have 1 or 2 action franchises every 17 years. I totally feel fine with that. I get it, but at the same time, it's like, no, yeah, Jesus Christ. But at the bottom here, it says, being in a big franchise allows you to have it all. I recognize the same thing. It's almost unfair for women. Best roles are usually in small movies, but then you don't make any money. It's okay to want to make money. Here's the thing, Elizabeth, and anyone out there who agrees with her on this front. Everyone who watches movies, who likes movies, wants everyone to make money. Why? Because then more movies keep happening. This movie was not one that anyone was specifically asking for or wanting or anything else. It was accused of being woke because it was pushing a feminist agenda. That is not something audiences respond to. We are not in 2014 anymore. This doesn't fly. If you're only going to target one quadrant of people, you're only going to get so much of the box office. It's not to say this movie can't find legs down the road and become a cult classic once it hits streaming, but you also have to look at it from that perspective. I asked my girlfriend, do you want to go see Charlie's Angels this weekend? And she said, no, we can wait till it comes on streaming, because she doesn't care. It's not something that's got a personal connection to her because she didn't grow up in the 70s and she saw the 2 movies from nearly 20 years ago, but still was like, I can wait till I see it on home video. I don't need to leave my house. That's another factor. This movie didn't excite the base because the base that would have wanted it would have been like date movies. I'm saying if they would have released this around Valentine's Day, it probably would have had a better draw. Besides, Frozen 2 is next week, and people are going to be saving up to go and see that movie, so they're skipping this one entirely. Anyway, this is why Charlie's Angels bombed. It's just a bad script, a bad production, and a movie that overall nobody really cared for. But I leave it to you, your thoughts, your opinions. Let me know down in the comments below. I will talk to you all later. Have yourself a great day. Please thumbs up the video, subscribe, and all that jazz, and have yourself a great one, and peace out. This video is supported by patrons like you. If you'd like to become a patron, please head over to patreon.com/Matt Jarbo.